Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to our complimentary webinar, which is brought to you today in partnership with NICE, Auscontact's national gold sponsor. Today's presentation will be Reimagining the Customer Experience Beyond the Contact Center. In the spirit of reconciliation, Auscontact acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, and during that time, with the help of our special guest, Cameron Adams, we hope to spark your interest and engage you in conversation, as well as provide ideas for you to take back to your respective businesses. At the end of the webinar today, we've also allowed time for a full Q&A session. Firstly, many of you will have already noticed that I am not your usual moderator. My name is Anthony Brown. I am the Director of Consulting and Solutions for Australia and New Zealand at NICE, based down here in lovely Melbourne. I am your guest moderator for today only, and normal service will resume soon, I'm sure. Just while we're waiting for everyone to join us today, let's take the time to quickly run through some housekeeping with you. Many of us have been doing this for probably 2 years now, but it's always worth a timely reminder. Please remember to interact with us today. It will maximize the benefit for everybody. And I'm sure by now you'll know there's no need to take too many notes because we'll be providing the recording of the webinar. To interact with us, please use the Q&A button. I feel like I'm doing a YouTube. Please hit the like and subscribe button down below. You can ask questions and make comments for Cam or myself at any time. But remember, as I have mentioned, we have scheduled time for a full Q&A session at the end of the webinar. But please type them in as you go along so that you don't forget to ask them and we don't forget to answer them. If you're listening through headphones or speakers and experience any issues with your audio, please note that on your control panel, you can click that raise hand button and our Auscontact team will rush to your aid. Or you can revert to your registration confirmation email and all the relevant phone numbers and access codes are available for you there as well. I know many of you are familiar with asking questions on this platform, but let's try it out in the Q&A right now. So the question for today is, tomorrow sees the Australian release of the long-awaited sequel to which 1986 box office smash movie? Oh, we've got some good answers coming in. William Foster, you said the movie is Maverick. You're actually asking for the original movie, but that's correct. Of course, it is Top Gun. There's some excitement brewing in some households, I'm sure. But before we kick on with the webinar, we are actually giving away a prize today as well for the first question asked and also the most questions asked. So for the first question asked, we have one of the lovely Jabra Evolve 275 headsets. I'm quite jealous. I think I'd like one of those. And for the most questions asked, also there is a Jabra Speak 750 speakerphone. So get those questions in and assure you stay until the end of the webinar to be eligible. With that, though, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, a familiar voice to the Auscontact audience, Cameron Adams, the Director of CX1 Practice for Asia Pac at NICE. So Cameron, over to you.
Thanks, Anthony, and so great to join you all this afternoon. Appreciate the time and lovely to chat with you again. I thought today that it might be worthwhile to reflect a little bit on some of the trends that are occurring within our industry, some of the things that we've been trying to solve together over a little while, and some of the emerging challenges that have come out of the last couple of years. In particular, I'm talking about the way that service journeys have evolved. And so I'll share a bit of our view on the market, I guess, and trends among consumers. And I hope I'll give you a few ideas for things that your organization might want to look into to kind of connect up customer journeys and make them more digitally native than they might be today. So on that note, let's get into it. NICE has been around the contact center industry for a very long time, more than 35 years now. And I'm sure many of you today have been around the industry for a long time as well. And over that time, together, we've been working on driving better customer experiences, higher customer satisfaction, and making our operations more efficient, driving cost out. We've done lots of different things to achieve those goals. We've implemented ways to triage interactions to make sure they get to the right place and provide a level of self-service. We've added channels so people can interact on through mechanisms they prefer. We've also driven efficiency through performance management and workforce planning tools, as well as by driving automation into processes and tasks in the contact center. Recently, we've made a lot of those capabilities that used only to be available to the larger enterprises. We've made those available to just about everyone because cloud platforms make it so much easier to consume advanced capabilities. And so we've done a lot, but at the same time, we're all consumers, we're all citizens, and we know from our day-to-day lives that our expectations as consumers have changed quite a lot. They've changed very drastically over the last couple of years. And we think that they're only going to change at a further accelerating rate over the next 5 years. So we're all still buying stuff. We're all still trying to find out where our orders are. We're still researching what it is that we might want to do with our services, getting technical support when things go wrong. We're doing all of those things, but we're not doing them in the same way. And it means that we've got different expectations. It means that we expect to be able to get our needs addressed on channels that are convenient to us, and that we should be able to solve our problem at any time of the day by ourselves with intelligent self-service options. When we need to move between channels, we expect that the move should be effortless, like when I'm texting with my friend and the conversation gets a bit too complicated and I pick up the phone and we continue from where we left off. And we expect that our experiences should be unique and personalized. And so if we get back inside the contact center world and we think about traditional service flows of expecting that customers have needs and then get in touch and then solve the need and then they move on, we realize that there's an increasing disconnect between consumers' perspective and customer operations and customer service functions within organizations. Journeys don't start with a phone call anymore. They don't necessarily start with a web chat. Actually, they start in a range of different and interesting ways. For example, if my washing machine were to die and it would show up a 3-letter flashing code on it, the first thing that I would do is I would pull out my phone and I would Google it. And I'll bet that you do the same. When you're thinking about buying something or you need some help, there's a good chance that you'll Google it first. And actually, we did some research recently. It's quite interesting. We released a report that was a survey of 1,000 consumers, English-speaking consumers, and we asked how many of them would go to Google as their first point of call when trying to solve a problem. 46% of respondents said they would do that. So I'm not alone. A huge portion of people's journeys start on the web in a search engine, which is interesting. But of course, there are other ways in apps and, with social messaging and so on. So this kind of explosion in different ways that service journeys might begin and how they may progress has led to some real challenges in service delivery, right? It means that as consumers, we can't necessarily find the service on the channel that we're after. We waste a lot of time trying to find the right information. We try self-service because that's our strong preference. That same survey said that 81% of consumers will, start with self-service as their first approach. But when it doesn't solve our problem, we get frustrated when we have to repeat ourselves and we start over switching channels. It all adds up these days with many, many organizations that kind of doesn't feel like one organization that we're dealing with. The branch feels real different to the phone call, and that feels really different to the mobile app. Every topic, every experience is kind of siloed. And I'd like to add that, this is not a criticism of the ambition of our industry, because everyone has been working really hard to drive better customer experiences over time. It's just that there are some major barriers to being able to break those silos down. And we will talk about that more in a minute. Let's come back to consumer behavior on service journeys. So it turns out that, and these numbers are from Harvard Business Review from a few years ago, it turns out that only about a fifth of people out there, when they have a need, will seek to get straight in touch with a contact center agent. Actually, 4/5 of us will start with a self-service mindset, with a digital-first mindset, and we will Google it, or we'll open an app, or we'll go to a website, or we'll respond to a proactive communication. That's much more frequently how our journeys begin, and they may, in many cases, end in that same channel, perhaps with a little bit of conversational assistance along the way, but a decent proportion will end up with an agent as well. And what we see is that different parts of organizations own these two different tracks. And there is therefore a lack of a holistic approach to journeys across both of these spaces. And what's emerged from that, which is a very common phenomenon, is that there are also siloed technologies that sit underneath these different tracks. That's why, as consumers, when we get 2/3 of the way through buying a policy on an insurance company's website, and we can't quite understand some of the terms, or we have a question, we kind of fall off a cliff when we get in touch with the contact center that don't know who we are, where we've been, what we've done, and the journey is disconnected. We start again. This is the gap we experience as consumers, and it's also the gap inside organizations of the silos, functional silos and technology silos. We think that the whole thing needs to be tackled holistically. The best way to start tackling it holistically is by giving it a name and really labeling that problem space. We called this challenge customer experience interactions. We think every organization needs a customer experience interaction strategy and technology to support it. We embarked on a journey to help solve this holistic problem a few years ago by investing heavily in R&D, by acquiring a number of companies, and we built up our platform to the point where we believe it can help you take the next leap in customer experience to intelligently meet customers wherever their journey begins and enable resolution through data-driven self-service, and then prepare the people, the agents, to have an effective conversation if they need to be involved, resolve any needs event. And the obvious question is how? Well, we think that there are 5 capability areas that will make a very big difference here, supported with intelligence and delivered in the cloud, so it can be done for every scale. And those 5 capabilities are having the right digital entry points so that we're meeting customers where their journeys begin. Journey orchestration to make sure that the whole thing is connected throughout. Smart self-service that actually gets the job done and is informed by a customer's behavior. And then when people are involved in having a conversation with a customer, making sure that they're correctly prepared so that they can personalize the interaction and have the right knowledge at their fingertips. We also think that complete performance is essential to analyze across this whole problem space. It's not enough anymore to understand the performance of the contact center. You really got to understand the performance of the customer's journeys across the whole thing. And we should be using the latest advances in machine learning and AI to make this whole thing smarter as well. I'll go into a bit more detail. So remember, I talked about Googling it when something goes wrong. I bet you do it too. Every organization that I speak to who has a presence on the web already invests in search engine optimization and thinks about this from a marketing and customer acquisition point of view. Everyone does it, but far too few think about it from a service journey point of view. And we think that curating knowledge effectively so that it can be managed and utilized internally is a great starting point. But then if you can take that much more effectively organized knowledge and project it out to customers in a way that is search engine friendly and they can find it really easily, then what you do is suddenly enable customers to sort out many issues themselves, which are often just about getting information, and can drive a whole bunch of volume out of your contact center quite quickly. We found one of our customers is called Gainsight. They're a technology company, and they found when they put a knowledge solution in that did that, that they had a 40% increase in traffic to their web properties overall, just from customers going and solving their own problems, which is really interesting. And then, the other thing that we see is companies who sell stuff pretty much always have an e-commerce journey, designed on the web, and many of them also have self-service facilities on the web in apps. Nonetheless, despite best efforts and despite continuous improvement, there are still points of friction in buying journeys and service journeys in those properties. And the result is that situation that I was talking about earlier, where someone gets 3/4 of the way through buying a policy and doesn't quite know the answer and they just need a hand. And at this point of friction, this is when journeys can come unstuck and generate costly interactions. We think analyzing customers' activity in apps on the web, making predictions about what they need based on what we know about them, and then guiding them in that moment with just timely bits of information, or if necessary, guiding them toward the right conversational channel is a way to drastically reduce that friction. And USAA, who's a company that we work with, found a 70% improvement in quote completion, actually, policies being sold, just by doing that, by helping people understand particular aspects of those policies with timely guidance. So, this is the smart start to the journey. This is where we plug the world of conversations into the digital world, which has been worked on for quite some time, most likely in your organizations. And then, so after that, we, in many cases, move into a conversational mode. And, that's not always because the self-service stuff didn't work. There are absolutely times that people need connections to people. When you're making a really big decision about a mortgage that you might be taking on, or you've suffered some hardship, your place has been flooded, you need a claim. This is when we need the human connection. And so whatever the situation, whether it's a self-service failure or we have a high stress situation, we need to be able to get customers to the right channel and to the right resource by intelligently analyzing their needs and routing with AI, as well as offering the channels that they care about. So it's not enough to do voice and email and chat, right? The channels I use when I talk to friends and family and work colleagues are anything from, okay, sure, phone, text, email, but also iMessage, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Teams, Slack. We use these in our day-to-day lives, and we expect to be able to use them with organizations as well. So being able to address those channels is key. And just by connecting the channels together better and providing a more connected experience, you can have a big impact. LPL Financial managed to improve their first contact resolution just by actually stitching the journey together across channels. Now, I want to take a very slight detour, and that is to talk about conversational self-service. This is an area of amazing opportunity. Sterling National Bank, who we worked with, managed to get their conversational AI to a point that they were able to contain and resolve 50% of their incoming contacts with a higher degree of customer satisfaction. And BT, who we work with in the UK, doing this outbound, so proactively getting in touch with customers who are getting broadband installed, for example, they achieve a 90% containment rate with a very high rate of satisfaction because of that proactive engagement. So the potential rewards are huge. And this is a massive buzz area, but lots of organizations struggle, and many haven't been able to get those sorts of results or anything close to it. And we think that one of the ways that we can drastically improve the chances of succeeding is by improving the conversational design, working out what can we actually effectively automate, what's going to work for our customers, and what's going to have the biggest impact as far as benefits go. And the data is already there to tell you these answers, because the answers live within the interactions that you're already having with your customers. By taking a data-driven approach to self-service design, mining that conversational data, we can actually work out where should you start and what's going to offer the biggest bang for your buck. So that's a key piece of success, we think, along with, of course, the right knowledge and conversational AI and getting involved proactively. Something to think about, a data-driven self-service design. So back to people interacting with people. Once an expert or a banker or an agent or whatever they might be called within your industry is interacting with a customer, they need to be equipped with the right information at their fingertips to get the job done. This is what helps them improve their speed to competency and improve their delivery of customer service at any time in their employee life cycle, but also being empowered with insights in real time about how that conversation's unfolding in terms of their behaviors, customers' behaviors, and provided with timely guidance on how to complete processes, because agents' desktops can be very cluttered, confusing, complex. Processes can be very complicated. Doing these things, giving behavioral guidance, giving process guidance, getting the right knowledge into the agent's hands, even just simple things like connecting up more effectively with a CRM can have a big impact. This is how Signify saw a 70% decrease in their support lead time just by much better integration with the CRM. So these are some key ingredients to making agent interactions more effective. And then coming back to that fifth capability I mentioned up top about complete performance, we need to look at this whole space. We're still thinking about the same two groups of people involved, the customers and the employees, but now we're looking at that performance of the journeys end to end, understanding the voice of the customer, not just by asking them to respond to a survey, but also by observing what they do and what they say when they're interacting. And of course, in this new world of more than 30 channels and messaging conversations that have very different characteristics to the old world of voice, we need new approaches to be able to analyze staffing needs and make sure that employees are doing a great job in the brave new world. And there's a lot of opportunity here just by planning more effectively with consideration to the channels like async and digital. The benefits can be great. Delta Airlines saw 73% reduction in their excess agent hours just from planning improvements and digital native planning. Okay, so those are the 5 capability areas we think are going to help join up customer journeys much more effectively. And then the last kind of thing I wanted to put into the mix is using intelligence. I mentioned analyzing behaviors of people during an interaction, and I also mentioned analyzing the content of conversations to identify self-service opportunities. Those 2 different use cases and others, like connecting the right people together, can be powered by intelligent machine learning models that have been fed with customer experience related data. And I started thinking really hard about the benefits that AI and ML could bring to our industry a few years ago. And we worked out, hang on, we either routed, recorded, or analyzed over 1 trillion interactions in a year. That gives us immense access to data, and a lot of that data is labeled. Think about quality management processes and so on. We thought, well, this is the raw ingredient to make a difference with machine learning. And then, we thought about our domain expertise and the tools we have to bring the insights from the data to life. We thought we need to invest here. And so we've done that and built a whole bunch of models that help answer questions that are important, like, are agents actively listening, demonstrating ownership, and empathy? These are things that contribute to customer satisfaction. We can measure them with this new technology. So this is what we call Enlighten AI. They're productized models to basically bring more intelligence in the contact center. So to bring some of this to life for you, I thought I might share just a real quick video that illustrates the experience of some people interacting with a health insurer. Let me show it to you, and I'll kind of talk over it as we go. It'll bring to life this idea of a digital connected customer journey, I think. So we're talking about a fictitious company, One Health, who's transformed the way that they deliver customer experience. And one of the ways they've done that is by making sure that they've optimized their knowledge to be accessed by Google. And that ensures their customers get connected to them effectively when they're trying to understand their policies or when they're doing some research. And while they're doing that, while the customer is doing their research, we can be analyzing their behavior as they try and complete their journey, work out whether there's a risk they might abandon or whether it looks like they might need some help based on their behavior. And if it turns out we think we should intervene, at that point, we can proactively engage, either with some prompt and guidance or even with a conversation, like even a video conversation if we need to make a personal connection, can be very relevant when people are thinking about their health. And so, once that customer has decided to sign up, they start a new kind of a relationship with One Health, which is one ongoing asynchronous conversation, like I might have with you over text messaging or Facebook Messenger. We direct that new customer toward an app, which has a great in-app messaging experience. And this is where we can start to have a new way of interacting, a continuous conversation that's rich and empowered with the right level of capabilities to solve all of the sorts of problems that customer might have. We can even bring the physical world into the digital. Everyone's really good at QR codes now. So this is a good way to connect paper information with a messaging conversation and that interaction in app. Because in-app messaging is quite rich, you can even do things like payments within it, accept Apple Pay, for example, embed knowledge, provide much more than just a kind of text interaction, and do it in an automated way, using the right level of intelligence informed by the data. We can design conversational AI that can really understand the particular situation of the customer, cope with branching conversational logic where they might go off and start talking about some new thing partway through a process. We can respond to that and kind of ensure that that service, that great service, that automated service can be delivered at all hours of the day and night. Now, one of the common other use cases for a connected journey is being able to deflect voice conversations in the right situation. So we could use conversational intelligence to host a voice bot, but if it turned out that a person needed to be spoken with, we could suggest, the customer is up for it, that they connect instead via the messaging in their app and, get their problem resolved without necessarily having to queue for 25 minutes and even collect that, digital version of their membership card. So then the last piece of a really nicely connected journey is about proactive engagement when an event's coming up. So in this context, this is a customer booking in a health checkup, which is an expensive exercise, right? It's taken up a doctor's time. Once that appointment's booked in the app, we can remind the customer that that appointment's coming up via SMS, in-app messaging, and if they're not responsive, we can even get in touch by making an automated outbound phone call, engage with them, make sure that they're going to turn up for this appointment. We don't waste the doctor's time, and they get the service that they booked in, and they've got the right information to hand to have that conversation as well. So this is, there are lots of journeys like it: installation, repairs, health appointments, where it's a good idea to prepare customers in advance and make sure that that appointment goes off without a hitch. So I trust that's kind of brought it to life for you a little bit. This is the idea of a CXI kind of experience, a connected experience. And it's one we deliver around the world, by the way, on our platform, with great reliability, security, and compliance standards on an open platform with plenty of developer partners extending on the platform. And I'm happy to say we've got good recognition, but while it's great for the analysts to speak about what we do, and we would love to share reports with you if you're interested, it's also interesting to hear what customers have done. I spoke already about that self-service proactive engagement journey from BT. So I want to share one other example with you that might get you thinking about the benefits of this approach. And that's with Comcast. So they're a very big customer of ours. They, a little bit like an Optus or a Telstra, in the US, doing internet and pay TV and so on. They had decided to reorganize their quality program. They used to have a kind of checklist sort of approach to quality that said, was the greeting used, and, procedural kind of questions. They organized themselves around NPS, and they changed their quality program to assess the behaviors that contributed to good NPS outcomes for customers. What they found, though, was they were still only able to check 3 interactions per agent a month. And so the data was pretty thin, and agents felt like they were kind of aiming for a moving target. They also felt like there was a fair bit of subjectivity in the process. So we brought some of those AI capabilities that I spoke about before to bear, so that we could automatically assess those CSAT-related behaviors on every single interaction. And it meant that Comcast was actually able to spend a lot less on their survey program, because we could infer the customer's satisfaction from the conversation itself. And it also saved a heap of money on quality assessment. And agents and supervisors loved it because the data was so much richer. So it's just another example of how some of these building blocks deliver benefits. That's it. That's what I wanted to share with you today. I wanted to talk about those 5 capability areas: digital entry points, journey orchestration, smart self-service, agent preparation, and complete performance with intelligence. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Anthony, let's see if we've got some questions. Is your headset disconnected?
There we go. No,
there you go.
It's a double mute situation, so all good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing that, Cam. There are no questions currently in there at the moment, so obviously nobody wants those super cool prizes that we're offering up today. Maybe I'll speak to the team and see if I can snaffle it for myself. But in the meantime, just be having a think about some of those topics that Cam posed, and he's more than willing to put some things on there. There's some questions coming in. Cool. So, Cam, do you think there is a minimal size of company where where using so many channels becomes unprofitable. You know, when you're thinking about 30 channels or so, you can't, I guess you can't, you know, throw resource at, you know, servicing all of them. So what's the sort of size for
question. I think that there's actually quite a bit to that question. And I think the first point that I would probably make is most organizations wouldn't try to do every channel anyway. I think even if they're really big, it's really about making sure that the right channels are used by your organization based on your demographics and your industry and the way that those channels work for you. So having that big number of channels is more about having the options, right? That said, I think one of the challenges in addressing multiple channels in the past has been that, you know, many times those channels are siloed and you need separate workforces and you don't get economies of scale, and it does really become unprofitable quickly. If you're able to have contact center agents who handle interactions on multiple different channels, like, for example, email, chat, WhatsApp, in-app messaging, and voice, 5 great channels off the top of my head. If they can do all of that in a common agent interface that abstracts away the differences between the channels as much as possible, and enables them to move between different interaction types as the volumes ebb and flow, then I don't think it's necessarily a cost impact. Actually, what you start to get are multi-channel efficiencies, like those multi-skill efficiencies that we started to get, you know, many years ago when we started to do multi-skilling in contact centers. Suddenly you can get multi-channel efficiencies, and it isn't necessarily more costly. So I think there is an opportunity even for small organizations to pick the right channels, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a cost impact.
Thanks, Cam. I think also there's probably a similar question from Christina, which is an excellent question given the where to start. Where do we start given the breadth? And I think we as technology vendors sometimes forget, and particularly when we spend so much time in environments such as Auscontact, we hear about all the wonderful things the industry and organizations are doing, the wonderful things that vendors are providing. And there's this tendency to think, aha, well, we've all moved on from the things we were talking about 10 years ago. We're no longer doing AHG and metrics and so on. We were all on customer sat, net easy, NPS, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But sometimes we forget that actually so many organizations are going, I want to do all this stuff. I know how to do, I know we need to do all that stuff. Where do we start?
Yeah, it's a really important question and a really good one. And it does depend a lot on how far along your organization is in its sort of digital transformation journey. If we think, for example, about probably a smaller to mid-size organization who maybe has a website and today interacts on voice and email, if you're really lucky, maybe does chat as well. There are so many organizations like this out there, and to look at a vision like this, it's just like, there's too much to change. How do I get there? There are definitely just opportunities within this whole space to make a big difference. And one of those, I reckon, is a great starting point for that type of organization is knowledge, because it's something you can kind of, every organization does it. Everyone needs it. It's something that has a big impact on its own. And it provides that bridge. It starts to provide that bridge between that web experience and having a conversation. So I think for that sort of organization, great place to start. For a very much more mature organization, then it might be more about kind of starting with some of the channels that have been a struggle in the past, like, your public messaging and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, keen to talk about your specific circumstances if you like, but there are lots of places to start.
Thanks very much, Cam. I think these questions seem to be flowing really nicely on from each other. So thank you for that. I guess, so how do we bolt this on, CXI onto, I guess, existing legacy CRMs? We've got this wonderful breadth of portfolio in the cloud. In the same way as where do we start the journey? Like when we're still like looking at legacy CRMs, how do we bolt that on?
Yes, CRM is such a relevant area for this kind of vision to work with, right? Because, our platforms are not a CRM. Most customer engagement platforms are not necessarily CRMs as well. So they have to work together to understand who the customer is and kind of keep track of what they've been up to. And if we think about, real legacy CRMs on-premise kind of, maybe, then it might just be about, well, how do we connect into that as a simple data source to be able to more intelligently route interactions? And it turns out you can. Even if you've got an on-prem legacy CRM, there are ways to connect into that as a data source and get some of these great benefits of identifying who someone is when they get in touch, and get them back to someone they spoke with or to the right team, without necessarily having to do a cloud transformation on your CRM. Of course, if you have a cloud CRM like Salesforce or Dynamics 365 or something like that, then there's a smorgasbord of benefits you can get. But don't think that a legacy CRM prevents you from being able to personalize experiences. You definitely still can.
Perfect. Thanks, Cam. So I guess probably to add to that, as you were talking earlier on about the identifying silos within the business, and what is something that organizations can do to help identify those silos and subsequently then use CXI to remove those silos from their organization?
Yeah, it's a big question, and I think I alluded to it early in the presentation. I am not going to pretend that having a unified technology stack that addresses this whole space suddenly brings an organization together, because it doesn't. It doesn't. There's still that challenge to solve about, bringing those siloed stakeholders along for a journey, creating cross-functional teams, working out how do you build business cases around connected customer journeys. And, we can help give advice on what we've seen in other organizations about how to start doing that. How do you start building business cases that cross across multiple domains like that? But it's a necessary part of the work to be able to complete the benefits of this whole picture. So it's tech and your processes and structure internally. But how do we help? I guess we can help. I mean, from a consulting point of view, we have people within our organization who've seen how lots of different companies have solved these sorts of problems and can share that benefit of past experience and give some advice about how to reorganize yourself. And of course, I mean, at a very simple level, putting you in touch with the right resources to give some advice and other customers for reference and so on. Hope that helps.
It sort of reminds me of we've talked about this a number of times, you and I, Cam, about how we could have the greatest platform on the marketplace today, but that doesn't automatically make something successful. What makes a project successful ultimately is the people that we have. Many of those are on this call. And the analogy I would often use is that is a good old photography one. You can go down to your local JB Hi-Fi, pick up the flashiest camera you can find, and you go out and still take a picture of your feet, or chop off grandma's head, in the photo, this kind of stuff. But a good photographer will pick up a disposable camera at a wedding and take an amazing photo. So it is about you need to have a great outcome, and to get those success in removing the silos. Yes, having the technology, to your point, is one element, but having the people and the processes and the champions in place, it's a absolutely critical element to having a successful outcome, which is what we're all seeking, really, when we're
you're so right. And actually, it brings to mind as well, I've been talking about what can we do, but it's also about the ecosystem, right? We work with a whole bunch of great organizations with their own consulting capabilities and their own incredible experience, our channel partners and the consultant community that we engage with as well. So there's a lot of intelligence out there, a lot of experience out there that can help get the most out of everything.
I think you mentioned, actually, on that sort of ecosystem, you mentioned earlier on about like an e-commerce sort of marketplace and some of those brands. I mean, what are the sorts of brands that we work with in that marketplace, and the sort of examples that you can find in there?
Right. Yeah, it's a real variety. I think, good examples of organizations we work with within our developer community are organizations like, Spice CSM. They're a company who kind of aggregates data from multiple CRMs to make it easier for companies to deal with that situation where they've got multiple old legacy CRMs and they need to try and make it easy for the contact center to interact with that. And other developer partners who integrate with legacy CRMs and so on. And then other partners like Turnio Switch do a great agent mobile experience, and that's just within our developer world. Out in the broader ecosystem, we work with carriers and systems integrators and consultants, all of whom can give advice about how do I build this stuff so that it connects in really well with my Microsoft ecosystem, for example, or how do I drastically improve my carriage costs around my contact center. Lots of different angles from that community.
I think the mobile agent is an interesting one that we've seen over the last few years, as we've all gone into the far corners of the country to perform our work and activities. It's been okay. Well, in the same way as consumers want to choose their device and their channel of choice, we need to also, from an employee and agent experience, EX or AX, giving them the opportunity to be able to choose their device of choice as well is an important part of that, especially when you have so much remote management and costs associated with taking people in those different places. I think it's it's certainly worthwhile having a look at those mobile agent kind of options for sure.
Oh, super true. We've got one customer who actually has aircraft mechanics as agents. So people call in and ask the contact center about their replacement aircraft parts, and they can actually get transferred to an agent who's out there, like overalls on, to be able to.
Not convinced I want to be distracted from fixing my aircraft, but still.
Yeah, yeah, please pay attention to the.
Sorry, I forgot to time that up.
Good point.
I was too busy focused on my adherence for the session, so. Real-time adherence. Awesome. Look, on that note, if there are no more questions, I'll give everybody just a moment or two if there's any others that want to ask to Cam or to myself. But otherwise, at this stage, thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you, Cam, for those insights today. I hope all the participants have got something out of this session. And as we said, we'll be handing out the prizes afterwards and the recording and details of this as well. So if you want to go back and refer to any of these things that Cam's talked about, you'll be getting the links from the Auscontact team very shortly as well. So thank you again so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Enjoy. Thanks all. See you.